Today on the HopeFilled Financial Podcast, we're going to be talking about grocery stores. For the main topic, we're going to be reacting to a food theory video about how grocery stores are quote-unquote scamming you. It's one of my favorite videos that I've ever seen on YouTube. But to get us started, I got to tell you about my experience when I had a grocery store in my backyard. Arguably, this is going to be one of my favorite stories I've told on the podcast. Good morning and welcome to the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. My name is Jay Disberger, your one and only HopeFilled Financial Coach, and I'm happy that you're here with us today. Last week, for Halloween, we talked about things that were scary versus things that are risky and how scariness and riskiness don't always correlate. And what we're going to be talking about today, in my opinion, definitely on that coordination chart, if we were to bring it back, would put a grocery store down in the not scary space, but possibly risky, as if you're trying to stay on track with your monthly budget, the most troubled area that I bet you've struggled with is keeping your food expenditures, specifically your grocery expenditures, in check. And there's a reason for that. Grocery stores make it challenging. That is, they lull you into a false sense of security so that you are extra vulnerable to making impulse purchases, which are the extra undue risk to your budget. When Amanda and I lived in Utah, we had a condo, and right next to the condo development that we lived in was a grocery store. It was a Kroger. And not only was it a Kroger, not only was it a grocery store, and there I think the actual name of the store was Smith's. Not only was this a big grocery store, but it had like a department store component to it. You walked in, and off to the left was a department store that reminded me of JCPenney's or Kohl's. You could buy your clothes and your shoes there, and just about anything else you imagine associated with a retail store like that would most often be found in a mall. Off to the right was a full-blown jewelry store. And if you went digging deeper into the grocery store, back toward the far back right was an automotive section, kind of what you'd imagine finding at a Walmart. And to get to it, you'd have to cross through a home goods area that reminds me of something like Bed Bath & Beyond. There was a whole section dedicated to kitchen stuff and bedding and home decor. From there, if you wrapped back around toward the front, you'd end up crossing a toy section that reminded you of a Target. In fact, a lot of this reminded me of Target, but it was bigger and the selection was more diverse, if you can even imagine that. Just toward the front of the store, there was not only the seasonal stuff, but office supplies that reminded me more of an Office Depot or a Staples. And it was all in one store that was practically our backyard. Literally, we shared a fence. The development for the condos and the grocery store parking lot shared a fence. And there was a gate between the fences to make it extra easy for us to leave the condo, go to Smith's, and buy whatever we wanted. It was incredibly convenient to have the store in the backyard. One time remember I was cooking something on the stovetop. I just put it on the stove and I realized that I had forgotten an ingredient. So I turned the stove on low, dumb or not, and I left. And I ran to the store. I found the one ingredient I needed. I checked out and I ran back on foot. I was able to go from leaving the door to coming back into the kitchen before the pot hit a simmer, and it was less than 4 minutes. I remember when Amanda and I were engaged, she said it was dangerous that there was a grocery store in the backyard, because if I ever wanted anything, I could just go and get it in 4 minutes or less. Every possible impulse purchase was no more than 4 minutes away. Another thing that was dangerous about having a grocery store in the backyard was you didn't have to really plan very hard for your grocery trips. You could just leave whenever you needed something and come back. The condo didn't really have much of a big pantry at all. So why go once a week to the store or once every other week and stock up on groceries and then eat down on it? Just keep a really lean pantry. And anytime you wanted to make something, you go and you buy what it is that you need to make that particular recipe. Or if you didn't feel like cooking, you went over to the grocery store and you bought sushi from the sushi counter because it really wasn't that bad. Now, I lived out there for years with a grocery store in the backyard, and it became a comfort. It became a convenience. It became a selling point for the location of the condo when we were getting ready to move. We knew that when we were getting ready to move to Kansas City, there was no way under the sun that we would ever have a grocery store in our backyard again. And the convenience of that was something we were going to end up mourning Isn't that kind of sad? We're mourning the loss of having a grocery store that's walking distance, a place where we go and buy things and trade our hard-earned money for stuff that we consume. I went back to Utah to visit not too long ago, and I popped into the Smiths where we used to walk and shop. And Amanda couldn't come with me on that particular trip, which was too bad. But I told her, don't worry, I'll walk through the Smiths and I'll take pictures of the store and send them to you. And I did. I, I I don't know if it's a really sad narrative on what it was that we enjoyed or what we miss about Utah, that the one thing that I said I was gonna take pictures of was a grocery store, but that's what I did. I walked through the store, I took some pictures of some of the sales, and I sent them to her. Thinking about it now, stepping out of the situation, trying to separate myself from the emotional attachment I have to the store, trying to be objective with it, Smiths did a great job of marketing themselves in a way where you felt like you had a relationship with the store and you do get emotionally attached to it. You have the sense of loyalty to the store. You have this sense of comfort. When I walked through the store and I took pictures, I felt relaxed. I felt happy. I was stopped by an employee in the store and they asked me if I could help find anything. And I said, no, I'm just happy to be here. We moved away a year ago and we really miss this store. So I'm just walking around and enjoying being back for now. And I know it's silly to be this attached to a store, but they do something to your psychology. They do something. And that's why for our main topic today, we're going to be reacting to MatPat's video from Food Theory. Normally, before we get to the main topic, I would jump to a budget tip or a listener question, but we're phasing those sections out of the podcast as according to the analytics, they're the things that underperform the stories and the main topics by far. And I want to make sure I'm providing something entertaining for you. So now we're going to jump right to the main topic. For the main topic today, we're going to be reacting to this YouTube video. This is Food Theory's You've Been Scammed and Never Knew It. It's a critique about superstore secrets or supermarket secrets or the grocery store secrets that your grocery store, the one that you shop at to buy your food every month, how they have taken advantage of research on psychology, research on shopping patterns, research on you, and utilized all that information and knowledge to make you buy more than you ever planned to. And I could explain more, but this video does a stellar job of it. I'm not going to play the entirety of the video. I've already jumped a few seconds into it. And that's out of respect for MatPat's work. If you really appreciate what little bits I'm going to share with you today, I highly encourage you to go back and watch the original video. It's only 15 some minutes long. With that, let's jump right in.
Today we're talking about grocery stores. And yes, I stand by that font choice.
That's a nice transition again from last week being Halloween, and now we're entering into November. We are in the month where everything is falling. The leaves have been falling, the temperature's falling, and so's our bank account.
Sound effect. I know your local grocery store may look all innocent and neighborhoody on the surface, but the truth is, it's using every sinister, underhanded tactic in the book to trick you into spending more, and you're falling for it. I mean, their tactics really work. According to the Marketing Science Institute, 51% of items purchased at grocery stores are unplanned.
And I don't know if this is going off of dollar value or item count, but the majority of grocery store purchases are unplanned. They're impulse purchases. They fall outside of the definition of frugality that we have. Frugality, again, being the intentional practice of prudent economy.
And if a store really commits to full-on psychological warfare, that percentage can get as high as 68%.
So indeed, the thing that I think about here, again, from last week, is a store here, if they can get you up to 68% impulse purchase, if they can harm your frugality that much, get you to spend that much extra out of your hard-earned money, then it's somewhat risky to go into a grocery store without a plan. And I covered in the story that they are not scary. So, grocery store definitely falls into the area where we need to be extra cognizant and extra intentional.
Never fear, we here at Food Theory are here to show you, the consumer, how you can fight back. And it is a fight, because if you truly wish to beat the grocery store, you have to prepare as though you're headed into battle. First, let's remember what's at stake here: your hard-earned money.
Amen to that.
And a lot of it. According to data compiled by USC's Department of Applied Psychology, the average US household spends $144 on groceries every week, and as much as $96 of that in one shopping trip alone. Sure, one impulse purchase here or there might seem like nothing, but it really starts to add up over time, and the grocery stores are in it for the long game. So it's important to not get bamboozled every time you step foot in a store, unless you're into that kind of thing. I'm just here to save you money.
Okay, I gotta go back and comment on the numbers that MatPat mentioned there. According to the statistics he pulled up, the average household is spending $144 per week. Now, that does not take into account the big bout of inflation. I'm sure that number's gone up. But I still think about $200, $220 per adult person per month is a good way to manage your grocery budget. At least I think those numbers in a lot of areas are a reasonable start for a goal to get your food expenses down. Back to the video.
But if you are the thrifty type, your overall #1 grocery shopping strategy should be to get in and get out as quickly as possible. According to 2013 research out of Bangor University, we as shoppers are at our most productive around the 23-minute mark into our shopping trip. But around the 40-minute mark, we stop thinking rationally about our spending and instead start making emotional purchases. We start buying what we want rather than what we need.
I love that MatPat mentions the difference between wants and needs here, but I actually want to go back and comment on the goal of getting in and out of the store as fast as possible. And I want to do that because when I had the Smiths in my backyard, I made a lot of tiny shopping trips that all probably fell in less than 15 minutes of time in the store. And I feel like I was still very tempted to make a lot of impulse purchases, even breaking up my grocery shopping into a lot of tiny little trips. The detriment to doing a lot of tiny trips as opposed to bigger chunks like once a week would be that you're not keeping track of all the little things you're grabbing. So your expenses, as you're swiping the card, as you're going to the store, oh, for that one thing you forgot, it makes a bunch of tinier pieces that make it more difficult to at least emotionally keep track of. And you may end up feeling like you're not really spending that much money. But as he mentioned earlier, small little impulse purchases, small expenses add up, and they add up fast. I think there's a point of diminishing returns, and we need to remember that he says that we're most productive around the 23-minute mark. So maybe an ideal shopping trip falls between 23 minutes long and 40 minutes long, and we try to cap our time in the store at no more than 40 minutes. I'm not sure if that's the best plan, though, so let me know in the comments if there's a comment section on the platform you're listening to, if you think that's a good idea.
This is known as decision fatigue, a psychological principle that refers to the deteriorating quality of decisions made by an individual after a long session of decision making. Grocery stores understand the principles of decision fatigue, and they use it to their advantage in all different ways. According to Martin Lindstrom, author of Brand Wash, Tricks Companies Use to Manipulate Our Minds and Persuade Us to Buy, usually at least one essential item on a shopper's grocery list is a dairy product, and that's exactly why the dairy section can be found way in the back of the store. It forces you, the customer, to spend time trekking through the entire building, even if Go-Gurt is the only thing on your list.
I don't know why he brings up Go-Gurt there, and I should probably give the disclaimer I'm not sponsored by Go-Gurt or MatPat for that matter. That would be great if MatPat and I did a collaboration, but that's far from the case. Now, it's really funny he mentions this. I can't remember if it pops up later in the video, but this is why grocery stores will reorganize themselves every once in a while. You'll walk into the store that you know and love one day, and it seems like overnight, nothing is where you know it is. Well, It's because now you have to search every aisle looking for where did they move the spices or where did they move the butter or why is the yogurt no longer in the back? Why is it in an aisle that's somewhere adjacent in the middle of the store? I always found it frustrating when the store would rearrange everything, but I would forgive them a few weeks later after I've gotten reacquainted with things.
Many stores play slow music. The idea here is to get you to relax, to take your time while shopping. The study using background music to affect the behavior of supermarket shoppers found that when grocery stores played slow music, their sales increased by nearly 40%. You heard that right, a 40% increase in the amount that people are spending from the music that is playing. The smooth jazz elevator jams that you're not even paying attention to.
Okay, I gotta say that's rather brilliant, and it reminds me of how if you're doing a workout or you're going for a run, you play the really upbeat stuff if you want to be more intense, and you play something that's a little bit more paced if you're trying to draw out your workout or draw out your run into a distance run instead of a sprint.
That's precisely why it's so important to be aware of these sorts of tactics. They're subtle, you would never notice them, and they're varied. It's in your best interest to consciously make your shopping trips as efficient as possible.
The intentional practice of prudent economy. Economy is efficiency.
Means getting in and getting out fast. So now you're all ready to take on that grocery store. Ready for the most immersive experience you've ever had on YouTube? Say hello to your hands.
I gotta say, if you're just listening to the audio, what MatPat does for the rest of the video is he has like a GoPro taped to his chest, and he holds his hands out as if you're playing a video game in first person and walking around a grocery store from his perspective. I found that approach to making the rest of the points he does in the video not only entertaining but creative.
Is no way that you're gonna get tricked into spending any extra money today. Now just grab that shopping cart on your way into the store and you failed. Okay, so one last quick little lesson before we actually go inside the building. Do not use a shopping cart if a basket will suffice. It's been proven that having a shopping cart in and of itself increases your chances of buying. And the bigger your shopping cart, the more you typically buy. That's why the average shopping cart has nearly tripled in size since it was first invented in 1937. Grocery stores keep ordering larger and larger ones because they know you're going to want to fill that cart more and more.
That's fascinating. Our brains are like, well, I have a big basket and it's not full yet, so surely I can afford to put more in it. That's really what he's saying. And I guess there's some psychology to it. Another tip when it comes to grabbing a basket, I've done it a few times when I've done moderate shopping trips and the basket gets a little heavy. It's an encouragement to spend less time in the store. One thing I've noticed the last couple times I've been shopping is it's getting a little harder to find those little hand baskets to carry around as opposed to the carts. I've sometimes had to go to the end of the checkout counters or the self-checkouts to find where the baskets are, then backtrack to the entrance of the store to start my shopping trip if I want to carry around a basket. I think stores are literally increasing the amount of friction between me and choosing a basket versus the giant shopping cart. And for that reason, when it comes to going into the store to buy like one or two things, I don't even grab a cart or a basket. I just go in and expect to carry what I'm going to be buying in my hands.
Right as you enter, boom, seasonal treats on display tables. Now, you don't stop to purchase any of them, but they do remind you of some summertime holidays and events coming up soon, like barbecues, Independence Day, Labor Day weekend.
For the season in life, when I'm recording this, we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. So I'm sure the stores are going to be packing a whole bunch of seasonal treats up front and making the bakery area smell more and more like fall, and then more and more like sugar cookies.
The display table trick won't work on you. No, sir, it's still early in the shopping trip and decision fatigue hasn't set in, but you did have to use a lot of decision-making energy to get out of that downward spiral.
MatPat has a decision meter here on the video that reminds me of a health bar in a video game, and I think that comes from his background running the Game Theory channel.
Store not today, or at least not yet. You can't trick this savvy shopper into buying a delicious item that is not on my list. But now a smell hits your nostrils. Dear viewer, if smell-o-vision existed, oh, the smells that would enrapture your nose. These scents elicit cozy, homey feelings, nostalgia even. You start to feel as hungry as you would be when you walk into your grandma's house for Thanksgiving dinner. And while yes, they do offer baked goods and cooked meats in your supermarket, even this seductive aroma could be a lie. Grocery stores have been known to use machines to circulate scents through the air in an effort to draw you even further down the rabbit hole with scent marketing. The smells these machines circulate can be specific to different regions of the store, such as grapefruits in the produce section or chocolate in the candy aisle, all of which make you more susceptible to buying, but you hold strong.
I need to mention here, I believe our memory recall from smells is more sensitive than our memory recall for something that we've seen. And I'm pretty sure the stores are playing into that here when they're using scent marketing. Now, MatPat mentions here that there are smell machines that can apparently boost the smell of a particular scent that is associated with the food there to make you hungry or do some sort of aromatherapy. I've never seen a store with the smell machine thing. So if you find one in your store looking at the ceiling or looking around or and like, well, there's some sort of artificial smell in this area, I'd like to hear about that in the comments too. I've not ever seen one of those in the wild.
For now, and power through the gauntlet of the bakery section and to your first stop, the produce section. A few psychological tactics you should be aware of are at play here. According to a 2017 Butler University study, if shoppers stock up on beautiful, aspirational, healthy food early in their shopping trip, they feel good about themselves, and that means they're more likely to reward themselves with treats that are less healthy and probably more expensive later on in their shopping trip.
I bet you that's why they have candy bars at the checkout aisle, and the store sort of forces you to start your shopping trip in the produce sections. I really can't think of a grocery store that doesn't start you off in the produce section other than maybe Aldi. I think there are a few other things that you could grab in the Aldi I'm familiar with before you hit the produce section. But this reminds me of how sometimes a tip for tourists, if they're going to a theme park like Disney World, is to walk around the park in the opposite direction everyone does. In America, we all stay on the right side of the road. So when people walk into a theme park, they hang to the right and walk around the park in a counterclockwise circle. So if you do the opposite and you turn to the left and go around the way other people are not naturally going, or the bulk of the crowd isn't naturally going, you'll end up running into shorter ride wait times and less people-y crowds. By and large, in general, it's a rule of thumb, but maybe that's something we could do at the grocery store. Save the produce and the dairy to the end, go through the store and get the other items we need, wrap around the back where they have the dairy, come back to the produce section, then hit the checkout, if that's an option for the way that the store is laid out. I think we'd be much less likely to purchase impulse once than if we went through the store that way, with the minor exception of the candy bars and stuff that they have right there at the checkout aisle.
Store lighting may be specifically chosen to make produce appear shinier, and the real reason that the produce is sprayed with that sweet, gentle mist every 15 minutes, it's not to make the veggies dewy and fresh, it's just to make the veggies look dewy and fresh. According to Martin Lindstrom, the water only makes the produce spoil faster. That's right, it's all BS done for aesthetics to get you to pick up that shiny bunch of kale.
That's totally true. If you spray enough water on something, it's just going to rot faster, but in the store with the mister on, it does look fresh, doesn't it? I think that's also the reason why they have wax coatings that they can put on some produce that you need to wash off when you get home. It makes the apple or the orange look shinier. But I won't deny, I think this tactic works.
Anyway, you have a couple produce items on your list, so you pick them out. In the process, you have to decide, is this one ripe? Is it not? Is it too bruised? How many do I get? A lot of decisions are happening in this first section, but your decision-making energy is still strong. You're sticking to your list, you're buying healthy food, you're feeling pretty great about yourself right now.
I'm curious if the increased number of decisions we have to make when we're going through a produce section is a friction that may separate us from trying to do the produce at the end. Do you think that you wouldn't put off doing produce at the end of your shopping trip because you feel like by that point you'll be too tired or too fatigued from the other decisions to make healthy produce decisions, and you'll pick the apple that has too many bruises or something? Let me know. I'm curious about that one.
Now it's time for you to enter the endless aisles of miscellaneous products. Wow, just look at all those shelves. It's easy to get overwhelmed. And that's not just you. There are, in fact, more product options available than ever these days. According to Michael Ruhlman, author of the book Grocery, The Buying and Selling of Food in America, the average grocery store stocks about 40,000 to 50,000 products on their shelves. This number has skyrocketed since the 90s, when the typical grocery store only stocked about 7,000. And if it takes you a while to find what you're looking for, hey, that is great news to the retailer. In fact, it's intentional on their part. Aisle ordering and product grouping aren't always intuitive, ensuring that you really have to keep searching to find what you need, and along the way, you're gonna find a couple things that you want.
I don't know if you've had the same experience as me, but one thing that I have a hard time finding is either peanut butter or honey. Sometimes I'll go into a store and the signs don't show it. And for some reason, the honey is not located in the intuitive location. That kind of thing frustrates me to no end. Even though I have found it before, even though I should know where it is, for some reason, it's located in an unintuitive spot that I get lost searching for every time. Now I'm curious, is searching for honey in a grocery store like a mutual experience, or are there other food items that you end up looking for and getting lost trying to find it on the regular?
Oh, and another thing to keep in mind, grocery stores also arrange products on the shelves in a very intentional way when it comes to height. Often the most expensive items, or at least the ones that they want you to buy, are typically at eye level, where you're most likely to notice them, while the cheaper options are placed lower down. See, expensive brand up here, inexpensive down here. Expensive here, inexpensive down here.
Another thing they'll do, other than just putting the more expensive item at eye height where it's easier to see, if you're in an aisle where the product they're trying to sell is catered to kids, they're going to put those items that are most alluring to the child and more expensive at the kid level, or the level where the kid is sitting in the basket and can reach for it and grab for it and ask you for it. So it's not always eye level. It kind of depends on the aisle. It's interesting how in the video, though, he does show that much cheaper options exist on the very bottom shelf. I guess that means that if I'm trying to do my due diligence and properly compare the unit prices between different types of pasta, I'm going to be getting my squats in order to find the best deal. Ooh, maybe we can say that the grocery trip counts as leg day if we check the bottom shelf on every item.
Would you look at that? Some patriotic ping pong balls. Ah, what the heck, it's only a few bucks. You assure yourself that this is not the result of decision fatigue. You want these ping pong balls because holidays are fun, and gosh darn it, you're fun. Or at least you pretend to be.
Or at least you pretend to be. There are so many little things like ping pong balls. He's clearly making this near the 4th of July, but I'm sure there are going to be little things like this that are pertaining to Thanksgiving, like little gravy bowls or turkeys made out of butter. A turkey made out of butter pertains to a very interesting story I have for an episode I'll tell later this month. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it. But for now, back to the video.
By the time you get there, you're eager to leave, but gum! Can't have too much gum. As you place the items on the conveyor belt, you realize that ping pong ball purchase was a mistake. I mean, what are you thinking? You don't even own a ping pong table. You don't like beer for beer pong, and you don't have any friends for any other pong-related activities, so you should definitely put this one back on the shelf real quick. But, a line is formed behind you, and now you're trapped. And again, this is not an accident. According to Business Insider, quote, grocery stores have also made their checkout lanes purposefully narrow. This is to ensure that when you're unloading, if you suddenly realize you've impulsively and regretfully thrown in a $15 small bottle of freshly squeezed orange juice, it's too hard to get back out of the checkout lane to go and put it back.
I know that I've at least been in the situation where I've gotten to the checkout and I grab something that I no longer want and I run back, but I've only ever done that if I'm shopping with Amanda or shopping with someone else. And that way, one of us can stay at the checkout aisle and continue going through the checkout process or putting groceries up on the belt, and we don't feel like we're wasting the time of the people behind us. So maybe a way to get past this is to go shopping with a buddy, and I know that's not an option every time we go to the store. So perhaps we just need to put ourselves in a position where we're less likely to make impulse purchases in the first place.
So you just bite the bullet. Oh well, looks like you're the proud owner of patriotic ping pong balls now. Now comes the moment of truth. Will your total come in under the $30 bar you set? Sure, you bought a holiday item that wasn't on your list, implanted in your brain by that bakery display table you saw when you first walked in, and executed on by the product's high traffic end cap placement. Then you also bought that gum for, why did you buy that gum again? And sure, many of the products you bought wound up costing more than expected. You fell for the trap of buying the expensive product up near your eye line as opposed to the cheaper products shelved down below your feet, and yeah, that extra box of Go-Gurt cost you too.
Okay, the impulse section right at the checkout aisle reminds me, I was just at the store not too long ago trying to buy a few surprise items for date night, And one of the things that was there was, I think, a cookie dough Twix bar, and Twix are my favorite when it comes to candy bars. So I was this close to buying it. But my parents, in raising me, told me never to buy any of the items in the impulse section of any store. They always told me not to. I never understood why. And I remember sitting there as a kid when they were putting the groceries up on the belt. Hey, well, why don't we just buy this thing? It's right here. Or, hey, mom, I want that. But now, as an adult, I'm extra glad that they kind of put it into my psyche to not impulse grab things that are right there in the impulse section of the checkout aisle, because I think it's genuinely saved me a few impulse grabs. And I know it's added up over the years. So thank you, mom and dad.
That's when the total flashes across the screen, $62. You failed in your mission. You fell for the tricks. You are now a statistic.
And I think that's where we're going to end up leaving the video. But it plays in right here where you get to the checkout aisle and you swipe all the groceries, you scan them, and you just then realize how much you're spending. Well, why can't we know what we're spending before we get there? Well, I know at one point Kroger was pushing a little scanner that you could use to scan the barcodes of the items that you were buying as you were going through the store and filling your cart. And it would keep a running total on there for you so you would know how much you were spending. But I don't think they have that option out there anymore. And I think it was because their sales were declining when people realized how much money they were putting into their cart. And that's why one of the most powerful things that I do to help keep myself away from impulse purchases and overspending my grocery budget is take a calculator to the store. And when I say a calculator, I mean like a proper scientific-ish calculator, little $10 calculator that has a little history so that when you add something or subtract something from your cart, you can go back and double check or correct it if you did a multiplication or a divide by accident. I know some little phone calculators don't have that option. So I will take an actual calculator as if I were an engineering student into the grocery store and add things up as I'm putting them in the cart. I know what my budget is. I know what my limit is for this particular trip. I know how much I can put in that cart. And I know before I get to the checkout aisle how much is in the cart and how much I'm going to be spending before I actually spend it. I remember one time in particular, and I don't know if I mentioned it before on my top 10 grocery tips episode. If you haven't seen that one is really good to go watch. But I remember one time I was going to the checkout and I told them, I make it a game. I told the lady who was checking out the groceries how much I was expecting to spend. And it ended up being like significantly more, $20, $30 more. And it was at least 20% more for that particular trip? And I couldn't believe it. There was no way I was that far off on the calculator. Well, I should have pushed it right there. Well, there must be a mistake. I took the receipt home. This was back in Utah, so I was, just right by the grocery store anyway. And I realized that they charged me a massive amount of money for the lunch meat that I bought from behind the counter. The person who weighed out the lunch meat weighed it out and then printed the wrong sticker. And I think they charged me for a whole ham, not the slices of ham that they weighed out for a pound and a half. But if I wasn't taking a calculator through the store and trying to anticipate how much I was going to be spending when I hit the checkout, I would have never caught that error. Not even looking back at the receipt, I probably wouldn't have even noticed the sticker on the lunch meat that I bought. And we're all human. We all make mistakes. I think this was an honest mistake. I don't think this was the grocery store trying to scam me out of anything. I took the lunch meat back to the customer service desk and they got it all sorted out and I got a refund for the extra money I spent, and I did it that afternoon. But if there's one thing that I would add to MatPat's tips in his video for conquering the grocery store, it would be taking a calculator. It allows you to know what you're going to be spending before you spend the money, which has been shown to reduce people's spending and reduce impulse purchases. And I can tell you from my experience, I am way more dissuaded from making an impulse purchase if I have to type it in the calculator and it's taking away from my budget in real time as I put the items into the cart. It's also given me permission to buy something that's on sale that I might not otherwise have been if I were just pinching pennies. It gives me permission to pursue some frugal deals on items that were on the list if they were on sale and if they fit within the budget after everything else was purchased. Well, I'm biased and I say that's my favorite grocery store tip. What was your favorite bit of information or your favorite grocery store shopping trip that came out of today's episode? And are you going to be able to apply that tip as you're shopping for your Thanksgiving groceries? Let me know in the comments below, and depending on the platform you're listening on, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, or follow. And until next week, until next Tuesday, budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.